Okay, first of all, we're just going to look at the outside of the brain. Actually, I'll do this because it's easier. Okay, they're facing each other, but it's the same thing. See all this squiggly, 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 straight down. That's the central sulcus. This is the precentral gyrus, which is responsible for, I walk forward, I move forward, motor. I move forward. Frontal, okay. Ow. Parietal lobe, I'm touching my parietal lobe. Ow, I got such a headache. Sensory. Okay, it goes back here. This is a parietal occipital sulcus. You don't have to know that. What you have to know is this occipital lobe and responsible for vision. Lateral sulcus. Lateral sulcus is not responsible for hearing. This temporal lobe is responsible for hearing. Okay, if you look at the motor, you see it comes down here and there's this little U. This is Broca's motor speech area. Okay, this is responsible for the movements we make when we speak. This area here is called Wernicke's. It's the sensory. It's kind of coming back here towards sensory. This is our sensory, and that's how I remember it's the temporal lobe. Okay. Transverse lateral fissure. This is the fissure between, oh, I forgot to bring him. Do I have that mummified? That mummified head has like a big thing that's coming out in the brain case. Comes out. It's dura. That's what it is. And it's the tentorium cerebelli, and that's what sits right there. So that brings me to my next thing, which is the dural sinuses. This is the endosteal layer up at the top. This is the meningeal layer down at the bottom. The blood goes between. This is superior sagittal sinus. This is the straight sinus. Okay? So this is how we return blood, and this is the confluence of sinuses right here. Okay? Underneath this, you're going to have the subarachnoid space, where the CSF circulates all around the spinal cord, all around the brain, and starts in the lateral ventricles and the third ventricle and the fourth ventricle, which produce it. Okay, so it circulates all around, and it's, which brings me to my next thing. So we saw our sinuses and our dura and all that. We'll come back to that. This. Right, left lateral ventricles. Interventricular septum is that little thing that you see going between right to left, right at the tip of my fingers. This is the third ventricle. My fingers are on it. Okay. Cerebral aqueduct. Fourth ventricle I'm holding. Okay, and it has 1, 2, 3 spots where the CSF exits. So it's produced here, here, here. You can actually see in this model. You can see here the choroid plexus in the third ventricle, and if I was to pull that away, you can see the choroid plexus, the blue stuff, in the lateral ventricle. Okay. Here we go. Production, blah blah blah. All right, I think I'm done with that. Okay, let's go back to naming these. Cerebellum, pons. None of the models. I had those new brain models hoping that they would be better. None of the models, except this one, does a fairly good job. But none of them really illustrate the cranial nerves, so you're going to have to use the picture that was in lecture. Okay, that has them in orange, kind of like orangey yellow. Know what they carry, know where they are to identify them. Okay, but none of our models really help, so I'm just not going to use it. This is the central sulcus on the inside. This is the corpus callosum, and it has different areas, but you don't have to know the different areas. Just know it as the corpus callosum. You have to know the medulla. That's what my thumb is over. The pons. My thumb is over it. Midbrain, or mesencephalon. My entire finger is covering it. Okay, it has the corpora quadrigemina, which are also known as superior and inferior colliculi. It has the mammillary body. This is visual and auditory reflex. Remember that thing I talked about hearing? Thalum. Let's go back up to the cerebrum. This is telencephalon. Okay, forebrain, prosencephalon. This is telencephalon. That's diencephalon. Thalamus, hypothalamus, epithalamus. Cerebral hemispheres, telencephalon, mesencephalon, midbrain, rhombencephalon, pons, medulla, cerebellum. Lateral ventricles, third ventricle, fourth ventricle, and we're done here, I think. Oh, optic chiasms, right at the tip of my thumb. Okay. Done with that. That I won't ask. This just shows the inside, and this is showing a lot of the nerves, but I mean, does a really good job, but I'm not going to test on this. It's just too hard for you guys, and it's a lot to learn really fast, so I'm going to use the picture, okay? What I do want you to recognize is the cerebral peduncles, which are at the tip of my finger. Okay, see what it's showing here? That's the connection between the cerebrum and the brainstem. Okay, so those are really important. So you could kind of see it right here. That's the cerebral peduncle. And the cerebellum has peduncles too, which come down and join. It's just how these things connect to the rest of it. So if it says peduncle, that's what it is. Arteries we'll do later, not now. I think we're done. This is all important, but given the fact that we're doing it so fast, we're not going to test it. Okay, this is the brain ventricles. I've already gone over it. All I need to. Just make sure that you can do all this labeling. Okay. We don't have the choroid plexus on this particular model. We just have the ventricles themselves. Okay. So you might have a picture of that. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, this first set of slides you don't need to know. This is the one you need to know for the nervous system. And if you notice, wow, it sure looks familiar. Okay, so again, the superior sagittal sinus. It's fair to ask, this is the right cerebral hemisphere. Okay. You should be able to tell the right from the left. Again, corpus callosum, this is the fornix, that's the septum pellucidum that separates the lateral ventricles. Optic chiasm, the hypophysis is number 16, or the infundibulum coming down. So number 11 on this is the hypothalamus. The rest of this is thalamus and the third ventricle. So there's our choroid plexus of the third ventricle. This is pineal gland, which is kind of at the top of here. Here's our superior and inferior colliculi, which I call in this purpura quadrigemina. Okay, it's the same thing as anatomy. That's the way it goes. There's some Roman numerals on here. These are where the nuclei for the cranial nerve are. You don't have to know that. Just recognize that's what it's talking about. Mammillary body, pons, medulla oblongata, cerebellum, spinal cord. I think you're done, at least with this. So look at it on this. Make sure. Did I do hypothesis? Yeah, I did, number 16. Okay, and I think that's it. Whoops, whoa, where'd you go? Come back. I think that's it. Yeah, that's it. So it's the first section that you can ignore. That's the second section of the mid-sagittal. Heart and fossa oralis.